And it had to happen, right? Because
Sure.
we're still in the infancy of computing, really. People don't realize that, but I mean, we are so early on in all of this. I mean, you know, people are making beer for thousands of years, you know, but they've just been making, you know, software for a very, very short amount of time, you know.
Yep.
So beer is perfected in some countries, whereas, you know, I mean, software, we had to go through the aches and pains, right? We had to deal with all
like
this.
in America, we have Coors, we've got...
But yeah, so we kind of had to go through these pain points and to arrive at this point where things are actually, you know, it sounds like we've got much more of a handle.
There's a big
on the
wave,
situation.
though, like, you know, Sarbanes-Oxley, from compliance point of view, we start having problems being able to say, well, if everybody in the finance department is running as administrator, do you really know what happened? And you can't make that statement if everybody in the finance department is running as administrator.
And that's regardless of operating system too. I mean, that's for
yeah.
any OS on the planet.
Yep.
Right. So
And
it's not just a
on the
Windows
box,
thing. Yeah.
On my
Correct.
Mac or on my Linux box,
Yeah.
you have the same problem.
Do you have any idea? I mean, I'm just curious now. Have we done any comparisons just to see how many users on other OSs are running as admin?
That's a good question. They're much more built around that model. The Unix has a super user and a non-admin.
And sort of understanding that degree of separation, you know, right, that kind of degree of count separation, has always been fairly fundamental to being a Unix user.
Of course, Unix has always been multi-user,
Exactly,
right?
and a Linux user as a result. But you know, you go out and you take a look at the Mac, for example, right, where they've had something similar, the kind of lock-unlock concept, for a while. Even there, the default user type is administrator.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I think on most of the operating systems that have historically been targeted towards end users, exactly,
yeah.
towards consumers, that's kind of always been the case.
And it seems like that's definitely going to change across the board now, I mean, if we're going to be changing that. So let's talk about the technical implementation. I mean, what were some of the challenges that you had to deal with, you know, in tackling this? I mean, where did you start?
The people
how do you
people
change
aspect.
Microsoft? Because we have the same problem with our internal developers as we do external.
They want to run as admin.
They want to run as admin.
Yep. Yes, I mean there was a lot of pushback early on, at I guess kind of all levels. A lot of the executives were very worried, I mean, understandably so, about the risk, right, of wanting to make this kind of large fundamental change where we say, you know what, everything's going to run as a standard user, and their immediate reaction is, well, okay, nothing is going to run then, right? And then kind of came back to that whole compatibility push as well. So that was the big concern up high. And then, you know, of course, it is one of those things where you kind of have to go and you have to sell it at this point to every team across Windows because they're the ones who are affected.
Yeah.
And it trades off. Yeah, exactly. And it trades off with them against the stuff that, you know, they really, really wanted to do because they felt it was important to their customers, right, for their feature areas. And so that was really the sort of hard part. It really has been a lot of an uphill slog.
I mean, say you have a test that installs code and creates the service on the server side, and then tries the app all from that one same code base. That's probably an admin code base. So now you have to factor your test into, get the test running, pull down the update, start that service over there, and now make sure that something runs as the standard user to actually test the functionality. You know, you have to do a whole bunch of work just to have that same test that you had in the XP days.
Okay. Yeah, it gets interesting too because a lot of the code that tests the operating system itself is kind of by definition, right, admin code. And so figuring out all of that, right? You want to, I don't know, write a test that stress tests the memory manager and creates a couple of 100-page files. Well, that's kind of a privileged operation, right?
Yeah.
By design. And so our test team actually had to come up with an entire new suite of test tools that they could roll out to the test teams inside of Windows and elsewhere in Microsoft to basically say, you know, okay, if you install this on the box before you run the tests, and you specify the elevation prompts that you sort of expect to see, right, our test harness here will actually be able to drive those elevation prompts for you so that your whole scenario can run end to end without having to have somebody there clicking, you know, okay on the prompt or entering credentials or what have you. And so there was a lot of effort that sort of went into the infrastructure as far as testing Windows and the tests themselves to get this going.
We have to accept then to some extent, or to a point, that some users are going to have to run as admin in some cases. Well, I mean, you know, it's not like it's going to happen, but
yeah.
But let's take a standard dev because you know, a lot of Niners are devs. We do have a lot of non-devs reading, but a lot of them are devs. I would say the majority. And and as a dev myself, I'd probably argue for running as an admin. Yet I'm standing here, and as I talk to you guys, I've been searching my head for an argument to justify running as admin, and I can't come up with one. What are some of the justifications that a dev might have to run as admin?
So I can give you some specific examples, actually, based on discussions we've had with the Visual Studio team. Because they obviously humongous set of functionality there. A lot of it is related to development, and they're trying to figure out what is the best way for them to sort of factor or refactor moving forward. So the bulk of Visual Studio works just great as a standard user. Right? You want to write a regular application, and just go and run it. That works totally fine. You start getting into maybe a little bit more of gray area if you start doing things like coding to the IIS metabase, right? Because even reading the metabase is accessible only to administrators.
Okay.
So at that point, Visual Studio, I think the way they have it structured today, you actually need to run Visual Studio Elevated in order to get at that functionality. The same thing that they have where, let's say you've written a service or a driver, or even better, an app and the installer for the app. Right? All of those three require administrative privilege to get that on the box, to get the bits on the box. And if you want to then go and debug them once the service is already running, well, that also is going to require elevation, because the service is an elevated process.
Okay. This then is targeted more at end users, it sounds like. Users of the system. I mean...
Yeah. There are definitely some classes of users where, it doesn't work. Or there may be classes where it seems like it wouldn't work. Like let's pick a developer example here, but it turns out that no, they only need to modify the code that deals with the metabase, once every 3 months, and so then they run as a standard user and they deal with the prompt once every 3 months.
Okay.
It's kind of a balancing act for users in that category.
Well, here's your opportunity then. I would say, there's a lot of people watching this video, right? And you have a chance here to send out a message. And it sounds like you guys have kind of done battle with devs, kind of up and down, concerning running as admin and everything. And you've probably built up some pretty strong cases, I would imagine, for not running as admin. What can you tell the Niners about running as admin? Give them tell them what to do, someone not to do, give them some advice here, and why not to do it, and so on, if you do it.
Probably the best place to start is with the Vista logo document. It targets all the different places that we want people to engage on. That starts with how you install, how you update your code, where you put your save game file, your log files. Most of the little things that you have to do to run well as standard user are pretty trivial. Use the CSIDLs to say where you want to put your per machine code, for example, where you should put per user code. If you follow the logo documentation, it's pretty easy to engage on making good standard user code. And
by logo documentation, you're referring to documentation that tells you what you have to do to be to write as certified, like a Vista certified app, I would imagine.
Right.
And where do people find this document?
So you'll find links to all of our information if you just go to the blogs for blogs.msda.com/UAC.
Okay.
And then there's a whole bunch of things, all of the different parameters that enterprise admins can use, how the different features work in UAC. I don't know the link to the logo documentation.
I know it's off the top.
Yeah.
Okay. But they can find it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know that devs I've watched as they've argued, you've got half the dev community saying you've gotta, stop running as admin, you guys are nuts. And you've got the other half saying, no, but I just have to run as admin, it's vital, it's important, the whole world's gonna come crashing down. So they can go out and take a look at this Vista logo documentation to find the arguments.
We're okay with you as a dev running as admin. That's perfectly fine.
We've got to accept that.
As long as you test your application before you ship it to your end user as standard user, and we've made it super simple for you to even be logged on as admin, but still test your app as standard user. Get it installed as admin if you have to, etc. Like if you're doing an IIS change or you're installing a COM object per machine, etc. Fine, be admin for all those things. But when you test it, know that your end user is probably going to be engaging with your app as non-admin, and is going to be annoyed if they get an elevation prompt because they can't let their kid run that application. Every time, if that game elevates and I have parental controls on, I have to come upstairs as a parent and type my creds every time that kid plays the game. That's going to get old really fast. And there's two engagements to that. One is turn off parental controls, make the kid an admin, and then